Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about product application. It's about nanofiber technology and the manufacturing process called electrospinning. It's about sheet masks and skincare patches, and it's about scientific creativity and working with existing technologies in new ways. Today, on the CosmoFactory podcast, I am talking with Dr. Laura Frazier, Chief Scientist at TaikiUSA. Laura, welcome to CosmoFactory.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very glad you are here. Uh, when we think about the cosmetics industry supply chain, it's very easy, at least for me, to think about ingredients, about manufacturing machinery, about packaging. What we might not always think about is product application or how the consumer will put product on their body. But when I knew that I would have the chance to interview you, Laura, I did spend some time thinking about product application, since that really is what Taiki specializes in. And certainly there's a lot of product application that happens with our hands. There are tools like brushes, sponges, various applicators, metal, stone, silicone. And as I was thinking, I'm sure a lot of listeners have already recognized this, but I was sort of reminded myself that product texture, product format, packaging itself guides the application method. If something is a spray or an aerosol, that certainly help dictates how it is applied. We see a lot of tube packages now with a roller ball applicator. Certainly consumer preference, right? Just because something is packaged a certain way or designed a certain way, we know the customer will use it as they wish. But the product, the package, the tool, these things really sort of guide or figure into the product application method. Laura, I'm hoping you will give product application and thereby our conversation a bit more context. Will you just give us a quick company overview?
Absolutely. So Taiki was founded over 90 years ago. It's headquartered in Osaka, Japan, and they actually started out with sea sponges for the cosmetic industry. That led them into some synthetic sponges and then into brushes and other applicator tools, and then to where we are today, which is more about patches and wipes and masks, as well as some new technology like microneedles, acne dots, and nanofibers.
Perfect. And as you've said, Taiki works with this material we think of as nanofiber material. And you personally know quite a lot about nanofibers. Teach us the basics, if you will. What is nanofiber?
So essentially, a nanofiber is simply a fiber with a diameter less than a micron or 1,000 nanometers. So to give some context, a human hair is between 50 to 100 microns. So we're talking about 100 to 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. So something you can't see with the naked eye, you have to look under a microscope. The length of the fibers can actually vary depending on the process. So if it's processed like electrospinning that is continuous, you can have very long lengths, meters long. So essentially, when you look at a microscope slide with nanofibers on it, which I've done many, many times over my career in industry and in academia, I've never seen the end of a nanofiber because they're very long fibers that are continuously spun. But really, the diameter is what defines them as a nanofiber. And there are many, many different polymers that can create nanofibers. There are different production processes to create them. But essentially, that's what a nanofiber is.
I like it. There's an irony there, isn't there? It's like super tiny in one regard, but endless in another. That's fantastic. As we've suggested a little bit, maybe not directly, but nanofibers are certainly one of the materials that beauty makers use for sheet masks or patches. And I think most patches are for skincare, but there are some now being used for hair products as well, and perhaps some other applications in beauty. But keeping with this concept of product application, help us think about the reasons a brand would choose to make masks or patches using a nanofiber material.
So there are a few different things that come to mind. First of all is performance. So we've done a study with using our polymer nanofibers, which we use poulon and sodium hyaluronate as the polymers to form the fibers. And then we added niacinamide as an active. And we compared that with a solution of the same ingredients, and we saw better, deeper, faster penetration of the niacinamide using the nanofibers. So the performance is definitely one that would be a reason to go with nanofibers. Additionally, there are a lot of brands that are looking for specific to meet specific requirements, whether it's a blacklist or a clean list or just preservative free. And the nanofibers, because it is a dry product and the water activity is very low, they don't actually require preservative. So you can have a very minimal formula, just a few ingredients, which really helps to kind of meet all of those different requirements that consumers have as far as the ingredients that are used in your product. And then lastly, this is something that may not appeal to everybody, but it's something that I feel appeals to me, which is something faster to use, because with a traditional mask, you put it on, you leave it on 15, 20 minutes. I am not one to sit still for very long. So the idea of being able to spray my face with water, put on the nanofiber mask, it dissolves, I'm done. I can move on to my next activity. That's also something that might be appealing to some portion of the population, maybe not everybody, but once again, it's the application, right? It's a different type of mask than people are used to.
Wonderful. No, that's all very helpful. I would love to learn more about nanofibers in general. And you've already mentioned the term electrospinning, and this is one of the processes by which nanofibers are made. I guess I want to know first, because I don't quite understand, is this the only way to create nanofibers?
It's the most popular for sure, but there are actually things like melt spinning that you can create polymers from them. Now, those nanofibers, you can only use certain polymers for melt spinning. So there are some, ramifications of choosing that method, is that you can't necessarily use the natural polymers like we use for our nanofibers that are electrospun. There are also some different fibrillation processes, but again, they're more narrow in scope as to the types of, and those lengths are not as long. So it depends on the application that you're going for, as well as the polymer that you want to use, what type of process you would use. But primarily, electrospinning has been the most popular and the most used.
Okay. Teach us then about electrospinning.
So essentially, electrospinning is taking a polymer solution and applying a high voltage to that solution, and then you have some type of reservoir that's holding the solution, and from that reservoir, a jet is ejected that then becomes a fiber. And then that fiber travels through the air to the collector, and as it's traveling, the solvent evaporates, so you end up with a dry fiber being collected, and you would have an array of either needles, or in some cases they use a wire that the solution is put on, or a disc, or what we use is ball electrospinning. So we have balls that are coated in polymer solution, and there are many jets that are ejected from the surface of that ball, and each one of those is now a fiber being formed. And so all of those fibers are traveling and being collected in a randomly oriented non-woven mat. And then we can use different substrates. So we can use a PET mesh, another non-woven parchment paper, something to collect the nanofibers on, because typically, at least in the cosmetic industry, we're not making super thick nanofiber mats, so they're not self-supporting. So we have something that we're collecting those on for the sheet mask type application. So for a nanofiber sheet or a patch, anything that's just being die cut from that individual layer of nanofibers.
That's so interesting. So they're not, as we might think of a thread or a yarn being spooled up, they're actually being contained by this substrate in some fashion. That's their landing place.
They're considered a non-woven because they aren't woven together at all. It's random how they. I mean, there are some forces, electrical forces that are guiding them, right? That, to the target, things like that. But they're not. It's still pretty
lest
random
the
the way
factory just be a nanofiber
yes.
web, as it were.
Oh well, you should have seen our lab at times. They were often fibers Sometimes on you as well, because you are aground as you stand there. So
That's so cool. So certainly a number of companies supply nanofiber materials and products to the global cosmetics industry. I'll just share a few examples. Plasma Gear is a company out of Canada that works with nanofibers. El Marco is based in the Czech Republic, uses this technology. Innovenso out of Turkey. And I do want to mention one of the newer nanofiber ideas I've heard about. This is from a company called Respilone, and they basically encapsulate active ingredients within nanofibers to produce skincare patches and masks. And the term you used, self-supporting, I think their nanofibers are self-supporting. I don't believe there's any sort of substrate. And I say that because they use the same, you mentioned the word dissolve as you were describing how we might use a nanofiber mask. Respirone uses the word melt, but I like the word dissolve too. You basically apply their mask and spritz it with water, and that's it. It fully dissolves. They call it fiber skincare or dry serum. You've pointed out both the dry, the sort of the water, almost waterless nature of this technology, and certainly we're thinking about fibers. And another fiber technology that our listeners may have heard of in the news over recent years is a company called Bolt Threads. This company makes a biotech version of spider silk, certainly with cosmetic applications. Now, this is not a nanofiber, and in fact, I mention it really just to make the tininess, or I guess I could say the nanoness of nanofibers all the more real. You gave a great example with human hair, but from what I understand, spider silk is at least 50 times, 50 times larger by diameter than any nanofiber. And most of us have probably seen spider silk somewhere in the world and recognize that it seems quite tiny, but there is something much tinier that we're working with. And while we're thinking about sort of new fiber technologies and especially new nanofiber tech, I know, Laura, your team launched something early last year. I'd love to hear about how you are working with nanofibers in new ways, and I'm hoping you'll tell us about NanoDrops.
so NanoDrops are essentially layers of nanofiber that are then pressed into different shapes. So we can have, right now we have circles, squares, we've done hearts, butterflies, all different shapes. And the benefit of the NanoDrops, one, initially we were looking at it partly from a sustainability standpoint with packaging, right? So with a face mask, if you have a substrate, you have the substrate, and then you have it in a sachet, and the sachet is in a folding carton, and so there was a lot of packaging involved. So we wanted to see how could we cut down on the packaging, and then we ended up finding some other really, you know, innovative aspects to the nanodrops as well, which is that we can put things inside of the nanodrop in a dry powder form. And this helps not only with the stability of ingredients that are currently used in cosmetics, like ascorbic acid, for example, that will start to degrade in water. And by putting it inside the nanodrop, we don't have any exposure to water until the customer is ready to use it. So it stays as a dry powder, just like you've taken it out of the bottle on the shelf, you put it inside the nanodrop. I like to use the analogy of ravioli. So if you think of the nanofiber sheets as the pasta, we can kind of fill that ravioli or that nanofiber with anything, any type of powdered ingredient inside. So we have a lot of variety that we can easily change up the product just by changing what's inside. And what's really exciting is we've actually had customers who, somebody who brought to us an ingredient that's never been used in skincare before because it was so sensitive to moisture that it couldn't be even for a short time put in water. And we were able to stabilize that by putting it inside of the nanodrops. And then, of course, we can put 30 of the nanodrops into one container. So that helps with the packaging. And we have a desiccant in the cap to prevent any moisture from coming in. And that's, it opens it up to now not only having more effective ingredients that are currently on the market, like ascorbic acid, because now it has a increased stability and so can be more effective, but also opens up to new ingredients as well. So that was really exciting with the nanodrops, something we discovered, and they're meant to be a full face application. So you just use one nanodrop, You can either dissolve it with water or you can dissolve it. We have some customers who choose to sell the nanodrops along with one of their products. So maybe it's an essence or a toner or something like that. Something obviously with water to do to dissolve. But there are a lot of flexibility there as well.
Yeah, no, I like ravioli as a product format in beauty. I think that's a first. It's nothing, something I have not heard of before. Um, I'm curious, what does a nano drop feel like?
Well, we worked really hard actually to develop something that has a very nice skin feel because originally, when we did the patches and the masks where, you're spraying it on, you're putting on the mask and then you're leaving it there. So you're not really touching it much with your fingers or feeling it much, right? So there's not that sensorial aspect. But with the nano drops, because you are essentially kind of mixing this nanodrop with the liquid in your hand, palm of your hand, and then rubbing it on, you definitely feel what it feels like. And with using just the polymers, which, as I mentioned, the poulon and sodium hyaluronate, which are both polysaccharides, so it's going to be a little sticky, right? Because you just have these molecules that themselves have some stickiness. So we actually started adding in some other ingredients for the nanodrop formulation, like squalane, like sunflower seed oil, to have a better skin feel. So we do have kind of what we've developed as our pasta, if you will, that has a very nice skin feel and is not sticky. And then we use that with along with the whatever active and kind of do some testing even there to make sure that the feel is still nice even with the active included. Because there are times where we have twice as much active as we have our polymer base, because of depending on the amount of active that they want to put in, but by weight, we have twice as much. So obviously the feel of the active can also greatly affect the overall feel of the nano drop.
And before the consumer adds any product to it, does it sort of have a dry touch? Does it have a bit of a slip to it if you've added an oil? Or
It's
I'm trying to
very dry
imagine
and
like,
soft.
I'm sorry?
It's very dry and soft.
Okay.
So it's, if you think about
It doesn't feel
something
like
like a
ravioli. I know
cotton
that.
ball. No, no, no.
Okay.
Definitely not. If you think about a cotton ball, it's much, much softer. It's
Okay.
very, uh, um, it's got a very nice feel to it. Very
Okay.
soft.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for indulging my curiosity there. Now, given your academic background and your professional work, I would call you a nanofiber specialist. I assume you have a genuine fascination with all things nanofiber, and um, I hope you're reasonably imaginative. My question for you is, what else might we be doing with nanofiber technology? Are there opportunities for beauty product innovation that exist here, things you're dreaming up?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, so I do work kind of in the R&D, with nanofibers and have for many years, even previous to my role here at Taiki. But, some of the areas that we're, looking at now, one is oral care. So the nanofibers actually stick very well to the buccal tissue in your mouth. So that would be, somewhere I would want to investigate. Also looking at something like fragrance, some type of a dry fragrance. Um, Hair care, you mentioned there are some in hair care. I think there's some other applications there that we could look at as well. And even going kind of outside of beauty a little bit in the kind of outdoor space, right? I mean, that's if somebody's outdoors and wants to take along, so they don't want a lot of weight, they don't want liquid things that are going to spill and ruin their bag, kind of scenario. So I feel like there's also some potential there as well. So I mean, really with nanofibers, I've had people ask me for years now because I've been working with them for so long, what can you use nanofibers for? And it's a question that that really gets me talking usually because there are really so many different applications because you start with the polymer choice and there are all of these different polymers that you can use, and then once you have your polymer that you're using to actually form the fiber, you can put all different additives in there, or different actives in, and then you have different formats. I mean, there's just so many different levers that you can pull, and different aspects of the development that it really is just endless possibilities in terms of what you can use nanofibers to do.
That's so fun. Thank you. And everyone listening probably knows already that I'm a big fan of partnerships. So I'd be curious to hear from you, particularly sort of as a scientist, what it's like to work in partnership with another company's team. I believe you teamed up on the NanoDrop project. Is collaboration just a bunch of emails, or is there some real-time hands-on stuff? What does it mean for a team of scientists, to work with another team and create something?
Yeah, so as you said, we did team up with Stellenbosch Nanofiber Company, or for short SNC, in South Africa, and we actually TaikiUSA and SNC formed a joint development company called Bōshi Beauty, and so that's what we're working through as the development arm.
There
And so
had
I
to be
work
some
with
emails in there somewhere, but I want the science part.
not as many as you would think, actually.
Okay.
We very few emails go back and forth because we have an online platform where we work together. So everything, every project, every request, every information piece of information is all housed in this online portal that we both can access. So when they're in South Africa, so obviously I get up and their work day is well underway, if not almost ending. There's all of the things that I can look at to see, what was completed today, what stability ended today, and now we have the results, or, what ingredient came in. It's all contained in this online platform. So we do a lot of communication via that platform to kind of keep track of all the projects, where we are at, what are the next steps. But then we also meet in person, well, virtually, of course, in person, a couple times a week as well. So there's just a lot of communication that goes into it, which is great because I work remotely. So it's really kind of my the team I work with most is in South Africa. Also, I did get a chance a few years ago to go visit their facility, and I think that was very helpful. I know about 15 years ago, I remember telling someone that I felt like after one in-person meeting with a customer, all the emails after that went so much smoother. The communication was just so much better once you had just one interaction was all it took. Same thing here. Once I had the visit to the facility, being able to understand, what they have in terms of equipment, where their rooms are located, getting to meet the personnel, getting to understand, their environment and everything really helped for me to know what I can ask of them and what to expect. And then, of course, I think any partnership is understanding your roles, right? Where what your strengths are. So sitting in the U.S. here, I'm actually in Ohio. It's a much easier for me to get samples from ingredient suppliers than it is for them. So that's something that I often will do, and I'll do an initial evaluation of an ingredient to see how does this dissolve with the NanoDrop, how does it feel once it's dissolved, those kind of just first looks at it, just to kind of help out with the development from my side. And then of course they have the equipment there to make the NanoDrops, and so anytime samples are needed, the request is put through again the online portal that we have. And so yeah, that's really key. It's just that constant communication daily, to understand, where everything is at and what needs done, and make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I really appreciate your sharing that. And Laura, I have to say the whole conversation with you has been so informational. I thank you for being my guest today on the CosmoFactory podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you, and I always love listening to the podcast. So it was a pleasure to be your guest as well.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the CosmoFactory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the CosmoFactory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the CosmoFactory podcast.